Finally, after a year of hype, months of waiting, and days of seeing people with their copies, finally, I got my copy of Jawbreakers. And I have to say, I am whelmed. Very whelmed. For months, comic book pros have told me and thousands of other people on social media the truth about Richard Clapbacks Are My Passion Meyer. We heard about his skills. We heard about his history in the industry. We heard about his views on race, sexuality, and those who transition. They told us what we get if we bought Jawbreakers. And well, we didn't get what was promised. I was expecting a phenomenal, magnanimous, mystifying, genre-breaking, unmitigated slobber knocker of insanely embarrassing and disastrous proportions. What I got was a solid comic. I'm so disappointed. I thought I'd get major suckage. I guess Richard Comics or Get the Fuck Out Meyer is a better writer than you thought. Oh yes, it turns out that Jawbreakers is exactly what the reviewer formerly known as Diversity in Comics promised. A 90s style action comic. That's what he said he was going to do, and that's what he delivered. 7 months late. It was supposed to come out in August. I didn't get my copy until February. That's almost long enough to have a baby, or still early enough to abort one if you're in New York. It's not the latest crowdfunded book ever, but with all the talk about other people's late books, it's only fair to point out that he missed his deadline too. Of course, we all know why it was late. Because poor old Schmiegel Mark Waid decided to fuck up Meyer's deal with Antarctic Press, which led to him suing Waid, which took up a good deal of Meyer's time and cash. It's not an excuse, it's just a reality of the situation. One thing Meyer did that most of the other people don't do is actually keep everyone updated. Everyone knew the situation when the books went to the printers, when he got them, when he signed them, and when he shipped them. The actual turnaround from Meyer sending the books out to me getting my copy was about 2 weeks. It's not that bad. I know some people had their books damaged because of the way it was shipped. My copy is fine. A little scuffed around the edges, but nothing that you wouldn't find in a bookstore. The print quality and binding are good. There is some haziness around the Letters for Lost Souls, the main story. I'm not sure why that's the case. The other 2 stories don't have that problem. It doesn't make the text unreadable, but it is noticeable. Ironically, this book is still better printed than most of the monthly books Marvel puts out. Numerous people have mentioned the ink coming off from those books. I've had that happen a couple of times with issues of Iceman and issue 2 of Ironheart. I've flipped through Jawbreakers a number of times, and even with my oily skin, there's not a smudge anywhere to be found. Also nowhere to be found is the massive suckage the pros promised. For months, comic book pros took to social media to trash Meyer, saying the book would suck because he roasted their books. That's it. They weren't really basing it on anything from Jawbreakers Lost Soul because the only thing he released was the art. No words were ever shown. So the best these people could do was take the original Jawbreakers story, which he invited people to roast, and use that as proof of what the story would be. They even took the Riri Williams satire, which he didn't write, and tried to use that against him. They tried so many angles. First, it was Meyer as a terrible writer. Never mind that he never posted any text from Lost Souls. They just knew the story would be bad because it's a 90s style story and everything from the 90s is bad. Then it was John Malin is a bad artist, a claim even a blind man would never make. No evidence was given, just people bashing his style, which is heavily influenced by 90s art. Then they tried to take shots at Bret R. Smith, but those were personal attacks. They didn't really go after his color work because it's so obviously good, trashing it would be like saying Eminem can't rap. When the crowdfunding campaign made ridiculous cash, the pros kept quiet. When it ended though, then they started their new attack. The book would never come out. Keep in mind, they were saying this as Meyer kept showing completed and colored pages. When that didn't sway anyone with a functioning brain, they harped on the book being late, as if A, that shit with Mark Waid didn't happen, and B, they didn't have scores of people on their side who've never even fulfilled their campaigns. But then the book did get shipped, and now they've got a problem. The book is in people's hands, and contrary to every expectation these people had, the response is overwhelmingly positive. No one hates the book. No one's saying it's a masterpiece of unbridled awesomeness either, but it's not the failure the pros wanted to see. What to do, what to do. Lie and throw shade. You've got the usual suspects like Pippi Busted Stockings and Vera DeMilo, and the 2 Twitter trolls who've managed to smooze their way into Joe Quesada's deflowered heart. Then you've got people like Eric Larson trashing John Malin's art just because. No actual criticism, no analysis. None of them sat down, actually read the book, and pointed out why something does or doesn't work. You know, do a real review. Nope. They don't like the writer, ergo the book must be shit. Well, hate to break it to you, not really. The book is solid. It's fun, it's engaging, it's so 90s. It's exactly what was promised. It feels so good to actually laugh with the book instead of at it. Mags, Kwanzaa, Cena. You should take notes, because Meyer manages to do what none of you could. Tell a story about characters we know next to nothing about. He does it by giving them character and different personalities. I know. Who would have thought to do something like that? I mean, having different people talk in different ways so that if all you see is a word balloon, you still know who's talking. Insanity. Even crazier. Doing this allows the audience to get an idea of who the characters are without him ever writing it. Unbelievable. See, this is what happens when you have other people check your work. There's another big difference between Meyer and his, let's say, competition. Passion. I know, it's shocking. Shocking that someone would actually care about the book they're working on. Right now, gaggles of never-wases are like, he cares. He actually cares about his story. Yes, wannabe General Zod. He's supposed to, and so are you. Everyone who worked on Jawbreakers brought passion to the project. There's not a lazy page to be found. Nothing looks phoned in. When something doesn't work, it's a genuine flaw or a mistake. It's not because someone forgot to check their ego. I compare Jawbreakers Lost Soul to 90s comics because that's the feel of it. It reminds me of what Marvel was putting out in the mid-90s, something like Mutant X. You're just thrown in and maybe it'll hook you, maybe it won't, but that first issue will at least be good. That's what this is. It's like The Rock, right when he turned heel and joined the Nation. It's not the greatest thing ever, but damn if you won't be entertained. So, know your role and shut your mouth, and let's get to this review. As usual, let's start with the art. John Malin nails it. I'm still trying to see what makes Eric Larson think the art in this book is shit. There's not a bad page in the book. Framing, staging, panel flow, all top notch. I never got lost on the page and never got confused about who or what I was looking at. This man brought his AAA game. If he phoned it in, I honestly can't tell. If I had to find a problem, there's a panel where a certain character dies, and it's an important moment that ends up being a small panel on a double page spread. And it kind of makes it easy to miss that the character got killed. But that's it. I literally cannot find anything else to complain about, and I think that's because Malin didn't want to leave any openings. I can see some people not liking his art style. It's very 90s influence, so if that's not your thing, then you might not care for his take on anatomy, but it's not poorly drawn. When things are simplified, it's all strategic choice because of the panel size, or how important that panel is, or how he likes to draw. Eric Larson harped on this page showing the shaman's hands, claiming that they're not anatomically correct. First of all, people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, Eric. Your style isn't exactly photorealistic or anatomically correct either. It's hyper-stylized, so if your real issue is that you don't like Malin's style, or you're jealous of his skill and talent, just admit it and move on. Second, the hand is actually fairly accurate. Try to mimic the pose with your hand. Hold it up if you don't want to use a mirror, and mimic the gesture. You'll see that the thumb ends up getting covered by the flesh on the back of the hand, so that all you'll see are the top two joints. It's not drawn wrong or badly, it's just stylized, and it's a really odd thing to pick on. Almost like you couldn't find anything else to complain about. Something I haven't seen anybody harp on is the coloring, and that's because Brett R. Smith's coloring is absolutely amazing. There's not a boring page in this book. He uses things like haze, rim lighting, and some textures to sell the page. This Lion King moment works in large part because of Smith's coloring. Just drink it in. I especially like the shift in colors from day to night. It's just visually interesting and it sells the passage of time. You can flip through the pages of the book and get a sense of how long things are happening just from the colors. Even during the final fight, we get that as the colors get warmer throughout the fight, showing that it's inching closer to dusk. Very subtle and very cool. Visually speaking, John Malin and Brett R. Smith give you a solid book that in any other situation their fellow pros would praise them for. However, since the book was written by Richard Can't Stand Ya Meyer, the comic book pros want to pretend the work isn't good. That's a level of professional dishonesty that's just embarrassing. Even if I don't like the writer on the book, I don't trash the art. If the art is good, it's good. But this is really about your boy Zach. So how did he do? Well, pros, he's a good writer. And funny. Genuinely funny. Like, you're still smiling 4 pages later funny. Sorry, Gale. He's legitimately funnier than you. Like, you're Chappelle in The Nutty Professor and he's skinny Eddie Murphy, funnier than you. What you also see is that he's observant of the story. The scenes work on their own and the transitions between them seem fine. There's no point where you feel lost, although towards the end there's a little bit of a rush, and to explain it I'll have to spoil the story, so you've been warned. The story begins with the Jawbreakers in Paris. They're on the run because even though they saved the city, for some reason, the French police aren't happy with how they did it. Might have something to do with Godzilla deep-throating the Eiffel Tower. They jump off the roof into the river and Silkworm, the leader, says to Cuffs, spelled with a Z, "You know how to swim?" And Cuffs is like, "How come you ain't asking the others that?" You know why. Little gems like that are scattered throughout the story, and it's just fun. One thing that's clear is that the dialogue flows, and sounds like things people would actually say. It also sounds like Meyer read it out loud to make sure it worked. You can read their lines and hear each person's separate voice. It's got a nice rhythm to it that moves the story along, while letting us get bits of info about the characters. Just that quick moment tells us that Silkworm likes to joke with Cuffs, and Cuffs is sensitive about his race. Quick banter, lots of information. Are you listening, Mags, Kwanzaa, Cena? So they escape and meet up with Killswitch, who informs them about a new potential mission. This is how they get to Nigeria. And while it's a fine scene and works, you don't need it. If the story began with this wonderful shot from the top of Pride Rock, it would be fine. There's nothing in the Paris scene we need to know. Nothing that couldn't be told while the Jawbreakers check out their new base camp. I get what the scene's meant to do, but since the main story does the same thing, it's just extra. So the Jawbreakers get a tour of the base and meet that ass. Zashi. How is her bra, if you can call it a bra, how is it even staying on? It's not even tied down. Every time she breathes, you're going to get a nip slip. There's no way you ain't seen areola all the time. None. Just dark chocolate dollars waiting to be oogled. And I'm not the only one who noticed. Cuffs is smitten. He wants a piece of all that scattered ass, and who can blame him? I can see why fans who saw this picture were like, can we get some more of her in the book? Zashi buys the Jawbreaker services, and then we get this moment between her and Cuffs where they flirt with each other. This love angle kind of works. I know some of this was added because of the positive reaction to Zashi's character. The problem is that we don't get enough scenes with Cuffs and Zashi to really sell them hooking up. There are only a few short moments, most of them shorter than this one, so the romance feels incomplete. This is something that would have worked better being hinted at or teased instead of really being out there, because there's just not enough space to sell it. There are only 50 pages. You really don't have the space for this kind of subplot. It kind of needs to be the main plot for it to work. The other problem is we don't get to know Zashi or Cuffs all that well, and you need to do that to sell a romance. Why do these two fall for each other? What's drawing them together, besides her obviously sexy body? A scene or two of them chatting could make that work better, but then you risk shifting the focus of the story. If Meyer cut out the Paris scene and given those extra pages to these two, then there might have been some room to play, but it would still be forced as a subplot. This may have been what Meyer meant when he mentioned that Malin stopped him from rewriting the story. Maybe this was the settle. If it was, then it only sort of works. It's not bad, but it doesn't fit as well as it could. Anyway, the team leaves later that night to find what Zashi hired them to deal with. And as they're crossing this grassland, they realize they've been driving on top of a giant ape. So there are a couple of things here. One, there's a cool trick pulled off. When the Jawbreakers pass out of the grass and onto the ape's fur, there's a subtle shift in the look of the foreground. With it being dark, it's easy for the reader to miss this change, meaning the Jawbreakers would too. Nicely done. 2, this is where we find out the Jawbreakers have powers. We're about 11 pages in, and up to this point, it's not even talked about or hinted at. When Silkworm uses his powers, it's not explained what he's doing. You can guess at it, some form of telekinesis or light projection, but it's not stated. This is not the worst thing ever, but you're a third of the way into the story, and you've given us this big reveal with the ape, and now the team having powers. We need a little bit of info about that. I know that on the first page we see Knife Hand with his hands glowing, but that's not enough. We've just gone from a world of former Marines acting as mercenaries to them having superpowers with no explanation. No matter how cool the fight is, this kind of reveal needs to happen earlier in the story to establish it, or it needs to be explained when it's happening, say by having Zashi be shocked by what they can do. 3. Silkworm says that he's surprised that Zashi's story is real, but he just shanked a kaiju with Paris's metal dick. Why is a giant ape any more surprising or unbelievable? Moving on, the team try to recover. Silkworm saves most of them with his powers and has them check in. Cuffs manages to land on the ape, and before Hellpriest can use the heat missiles to take out the ape, Cuffs is like, "Hold up, I'm about to rock this fool with the power of 1,000 slaves. Break yourself." I added that part. And he knocks out its eye, and that's it's a little weak for the strength of 1,000 slaves. Must have been house niggas. What? I'm black, I can say it. By the way, you can put that line in the next one. I give you nigga privileges, Meyer. Put it in the next one. And then Silkworm is like, "Please stop saying that, Cuffs. You have no idea where your power comes from. Stop guessing." You can just see it, can't you? He's just going around saying wild shit, "Taste the power of 1,000 pimps," and then he backhands somebody. Big pimpin'. The jokes just write themselves. This is the guy the industry said wasn't good enough. Really? He's not good enough, but a grown woman having a 10-year-old, not actually trans kid saying Wang is total hotness. Of course, what gets knocked out must fall right on top of Hellpriest. He gets trapped inside the eye, and Devil Dog goes to save him while Knife Hand goes full Fingelfin on the ape. Devil Dog fails to stop the eye, instead getting trapped inside it too, and then gets sent off the cliff. He's like, "If we're lucky, the eyeball will cushion the fall," and Hellpriest is like, "What eyeball?" Funny, but it only works if you know about Hellpriest, which you don't at this point, unless you read the first Jawbreaker books or follow Meyer's YouTube channel. Silkworm has Cuffs set him up for a fastball special, and unlike every writer at Marvel, Meyer has his hints not to call it that. This takes out the ape, and then we get this random moment between Zashi and Cuffs that really makes no sense. Meanwhile, we find out that Hellpriest is blind, kind of, which is why he didn't see the eye. See, now the previous joke makes sense. It would have been better to at least hint at his blindness earlier on, just so the readers could get that joke. Then we meet our big bad, who captures the pair. Back at the ape, Knife Hand cuts it open and out spills gold. We find out from the big bad that the ape travels through space and time in different dimensions, swallowing riches and armies whole. This guy wants the ape dead so he can get all the money. He also spills the beans about Zashi. She's a plant, a honeypot, a succulent brown sugar honeypot that would make the gayest man question his sexuality. And that's fine, but the reveal is off panel, and that's not fine. That's a big moment for the story, and we don't get to see Devil Dog or Hellpriest's reaction. We don't get the story of why Zashi is with him, and it's not clear why he would even tell them this. Hell, you're monologuing, dude, but you ain't even tied him up. What if they start breaking people's necks and get away? Now they know your whole damn plan. It's just a weird place for this to happen because he doesn't seem to have any reason to do this. They don't even know who he is. There's a missing story beat that needs to be here. This is usually where the villain tries to fool the heroes into thinking that he's on their side. If that's not what he would do, then we need to see what he would do. Part of the reason why this beat may have been skipped is because there are 3 subplots running through the main story. There's a romance between Cuffs and Zashi, there's something with Silkworm about to come up, and then there's a thing with the shaman that leads into Silkworm's bit. That's 3 subplots and a main plot, and only 50 pages. That's too much. Myers handles the characters well. He actually nails that part. Only a few of them get a lot of panel time. The rest are in the background. It's the numerous subplots that are eating into fleshing out the characters. If he picked one character to focus on, say Silkworm, that would have made the difference. By going the ensemble route, it's easy to get caught up in each character's story and end up with too much happening at once. Back to the story, the shaman shows up, somehow knows that Zashi is a plant, and then tells the Jawbreakers the ape's story. The ape was a normal animal, but then went through a vortex and it was changed by it. In the process, it lost its soul and has been hopping vortices trying to find it. The shaman absorbs the ape's pain, which heals it, and tells Silkworm that his job as a shaman is to protect the ape because of what he represents to humanity, which we never exactly find out. I'm guessing it's a metaphor, but the way it's presented, it comes off as literal. And we just can't skip over the guy knowing about Zashi. How does he know this? Why don't the Jawbreakers, who are right there, respond to this? Hell, why aren't they even suspicious of him? He's using magic, healing the beast they just took down, and telling them this oh-so-convenient sob story. Don't kill him, he's lost his soul. Cuffs, bust that bitch up. You'd think they'd be a little skeptical about Captain Holocaust's story. Turns out the shaman used the pain he absorbed from the ape to create a spell to hide them from the big bad as he approaches. His cybernetic eyes can kind of detect them, but not enough to pinpoint their location. Meanwhile, Hellpriest can totally see them because they have souls, and he can see souls. We find out that the shaman thing is just a side gig. The shaman's real job is in telecom. As you do. Then he uses the ape's blood to mark Silkworm, connecting him to the ape and giving him some control over the ape's mind. Back in the convoy, Devil Dog and Hell Priest take out the goons and escape. See, I fucking told you to tie him up. And somehow, the big bad with all his cybernetic implants doesn't hear this. They were in the same vehicle, so it's odd that he misses this. The pair escape, run back to the Jawbreakers, and let them know that Zashi is a plan, which they should already know since the shaman mentioned this before, and they were like 10 feet away from it. Zashi hauls ass and cuffs to let her get away. She runs back to the Warlord, who kills his driver for letting the Jawbreakers get away, even though he should have been able to stop them himself. You're a literal arsenal, dude. Lazy ass Warlord. Back at the ape, the shaman, who turns out to be a millennial, the arcane is a hell of a drug, casts a spell to allow Hell Priest to help the ape find the right vortex that leads back to its soul. And then he dies. Just turns to glowy dust. Didn't even get his name. Oh well. Meanwhile, the big bad takes advantage of the distraction, but his crew gets knife-handed. Literally. And the rest go to attack to kill the ape. The Warlord decides to use Zashi as a bargaining chip to get Cuffs to let him get away, and it works. Because, look at her. Back at the battle, the ape won't move, and Cuffs reminds Silkworm that he can control the ape, which he does. Quick question though, how does Cuffs get back so fast? Moving on, Killswitch checks in and lets him know he's close. While this is going on, Zashi decides to attack the Warlord. That seems like a great idea. The Warlord is strapped like a Gundam, and what do you got? A spear. Is it a vibranium spear? Nah. An adamantium spear? Nah. An nth metal spear? Nah. Well, nice knowing you. And if that weren't enough, the ape finally decides he's gonna fight back. You get this awesome 2-page splash page of the ape just destroying the Warlord's forces. You can hear it. The giant swooshes, the crash of metal on metal, the screams. Oh, the screams, and oh yeah, Zashi gets killed. Seriously, this is a big moment. You've been selling us this romance with Zashi and Cuffs, and not only does she run off without Cuffs following her, not only does she attack a guy she has to know she can't kill, but she gets killed in this small panel. Cool shot with the ape, but Zashi's death should be more prominent. This is part of the problem with the multiple subplots. You don't have enough space for all of them in 50 pages. As for the ape, he misses his vortex and starts giving up. Killswitch arrives and decimates the forces. He targets the Warlord, who doesn't back down. He's like, you think that Cold War era Russian tank buster can take down a 21st century super cyborg? I'm here, kill me, come on, kill me, I'm here, come on, do it, kill me. Well, since you ask, I love that. I just love it. Just fucking destroys him. And that, kids, is why pencils have erasers. Meanwhile, Silkworm convinces the ape to go through the vortex and continue searching for its soul. The Jawbreakers head out and we get this perfect moment with Devil Dog. He's like, I'm really glad we were able to help that giant ape knife hand, and hopefully he finds what he's looking for. You know what else I'm happy about? The amount of pockets on my armor suit. Because they're just filled with jewels and gold coins. Filled. So that's what they're for. I love that too. Puts a smile on your face. So it wraps up with the crew toasting to Zashi, and we see what the shaman meant about what the ape meant to humanity. We see a picture of Silkworm with his daughter. It's an okay ending, but the connection isn't quite there. If you read the previous Jawbreaker stories, which include the backstory about Silkworm and his daughter, this works. So if you treat Lost Souls as a continuation to that setup, no problem. But, oh, that giggling you hear is Richard caught me slipping by getting the joke before I say it. Say it with me, dude. Every comic is someone's first comic. And if this is someone's first Jawbreakers comic, they probably don't know anything about Silkworm's daughter, so the scene has less impact and meaning. If you put a mention of her in a story earlier, maybe in a scene with the shaman, then it could work. If that had been the lead-in when they landed in Nigeria, that would have worked even better. Without that, it just doesn't work that well. That said, books 1 and 2 are part of this collection, so at the very least it'll make more sense once you read those. But it should have been in Lost Souls too. Overall, this is a good start. There are some parts that didn't gel quite that well, but nothing that destroys the fun of the book. You walk away entertained and wanting to read it again. If this were an ongoing series, there's enough here to keep me interested. I want to see more. I want some world building. I want to know more about how their powers work. I also want a greater focus on individual characters per story. I think that would resolve some of the subplot issues. This comic is not the most revolutionary thing ever. It's not going to change the face of comics, but it is a fun read, and I'm sure Antarctic Press is kind of kicking themselves for not publishing it. There's plenty of potential here, especially since the concept isn't locked down to a linear flow. Meyer can do what Mike Mignola did with Hellboy and jump all over the place and it would still work. I mean, it's practically built for miniseries. This comic is also not the worst thing ever. Not even close. Even with its problems, it's still more coherent than anything Mags or Kwanzaa have published. It nails the 90s humor Cena Grace tried to use. It's actually funny, which are words no one's uttered about Gail Simone's work in quite some time. I don't know if Meyer did everything he set out to do, but one thing he did do is present a solid piece of entertainment. This wasn't a shill review. I came at it the same way I do other reviews. If I had to compare it to another comic, I say this hits somewhere around Fighting American. It's not as well planned, but it's just as fun. You pretty much have to hate comics not to like this comic. And that leaves me with a serious question. What would have happened if the industry had given the man a chance? It's possible that he wasn't ready when he first tried to break in, but at the same time, you can see where he's going. You can see the ideas, see that plenty of them had merit, and that with some guidance and editing, he's pretty much ready to go. It's bold to just throw that away. Even if it's because you don't personally like him, he's clearly got good ideas, and his execution isn't bad. You can see that he's catching most of his mistakes and fixing them on his own. There are plenty of people working in the industry that other folks don't like, so what's the deal here? Why are y'all so hellbent against him, but willing to give work to guys like Eric Esquivel? Look, I'm not shilling for Meyer. If the book sucked, I'd have let you know. But it didn't. And you already knew it wouldn't. I'm no conspiracy theorist, but I am a skeptic and a cynic, and both my skepticism and cynicism are saying that maybe that's why you fucked with this deal, why you tried to turn people against him, and why you continue to trash him without ever showing his best work. You know you're wrong. Instead of admitting it, you want to take him down. And it's weird because, like I said before, one very apparent thing is the passion Meyer brought to the story. You can tell he wants to tell a good story. He wants to entertain. And it's not just, I got my story out there, but did you like it? I've been watching wrestling clips lately, watching promos, works, and shoots, and one thing that the best wrestlers do is respond to the crowd. If people cheer when you say this line or lose it when you do this pose, you listen and you do it again. You don't keep doing the shit that's not working. You do what they like. And if you get over, the fans will reward you. The same thing is true with comics. People want to be entertained. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be good. It's got to make them not only want to pick up the next issue, but make them want to read the one they just read again. Richard Meyer nailed that. Maybe you should stop hating him for being able to do that. For those of you who didn't get a chance to get Jawbreakers Lost Souls, if he puts it back up, get a copy. I promise you, you're going to enjoy it. And like I said, it's not the only story in the book. You get a remastered version of the first story, books 1 and 2, so it's totally worth the $25. If you read the book, let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. Thanks for listening.